Man, have I been waiting to drive this one for a while now. Literally, as soon as Land Rover announced a new Defender, you knew down the road at some point they were gonna stuff a V8 in it. That's what Jaguar and Land Rover do. They take their vehicles, they say, look at this one, we've got a nice inline six, then they go, and then look at the V8, and then that's what this is. This is the Land Rover Defender 90 V8, and it is awesome. It is not exactly how I would spec mine were I to get one, but it is fantastic. A few minutes ago, I just drove it up a section of trail I have always been intimidated to hit just because it's a very short section, but it's a very steep climb near the Four Corners area of the Maple Springs Truck Trail. And in this, whoa! I put it into rock crawl mode. I put the transfer case, I put it in 4-low, and then I just went up it and it did it on dumb wheels and tires, and I love it. Let's back way up though. First, let's talk about the outside of this thing. I am a 110 fan. I like the 4 doors. I like the longer wheelbase version of these. I understand that the 90 is a little bit better for real deal off-roading in terms of a better breakover angle, and I don't give a shit. I think the 90 looks oddly stubby. It looks like a dog that had its tail docked, and that is a horrible practice if you do that. And that's what it looks like here on the 90. I think it still looks cool. I just think the 110 looks way better. There's some goofiness to the 90, but I still like it. But just the 110 rules. Now, another thing that's silly, this is a Carpathian edition, which gets at this satin finish protective film on the outside of the paint. So it does look cool, and that is an actual protective satin finish. So they say if you brush up against brush, it'll protect your paint, which is good because these things aren't cheap. But the goofy part on the outside is, well, there's 2 of them. The first goofy thing, they're only offering this in 3 colors, and that is stupid. Gray, black, and white. This one is gray. The other goofy thing is that this comes on 22-inch wheels. I know we need to clear brakes. I know people like the big hoops, but at a 22-inch wheel, your aggressive tire choices are not great. However, Land Rover lets you swap out to 20s, which clear the brakes, which is awesome, and then you can spec an all-terrain tire right on the configurator. It's either a no-cost option or it's like 350 bucks. Either way, do it. Get the 20s, get better tires. But even with these tires, I'm still impressed by what this thing can do. Imagine if it had good tires. Wow. But on the outside, again, I like the satin finish to this paint to protect it. It looks cool and it is functional, which is kind of nice. Slide inside. These don't have leather seats. These have this great cloth-like material, this almost suede-ish cloth. It's not suede, it's closer to cloth. I don't know what it is, what it's called, but I like it a lot. I'm not a big leather fan. I like these. There's suede or Alcantara on the steering wheel, or Dynamica, whatever Land Rover calls it. Not necessary. This is not a race car. I'm not in gloves looking for grip on my steering wheel. I would prefer to not have it. I don't hate it, but I've seen other journalists comment that grubby hands over time are going to ruin this, which might be true. I'm not 100% sure how these things hold up to grubby hands. But I don't hate it, I don't need it. I do like that this has the larger 11+ inch screen with the latest PV Pro infotainment system. I think it works well, it responds well, it looks good, the display itself looks good. The gauge cluster looks good, works well. You can configure it with a single gauge, dual gauge, put the full map up there. You can look at your media information. And then of course it has wireless CarPlay as well too. Though it doesn't have wireless charging, which is silly. If you're gonna do wireless CarPlay, you should also then offer wireless charging. It's just, I mean, they should go hand in hand. But terms of interior comfort, it is great. There's tons of room. There's more room than you need up front. I'm saying that at 6'3". And then in the back seat, even though this is a 2-door, there's really good room in the back seat too. The area where you're really let down in terms of the interior packaging is the cargo space. The cargo space on the 90 is infuriatingly bad. The seats don't fold flat. There's something in the way of the seats. You can't put crap back there, whereas the 110 is great, is really good for cargo space. The 90 is like a joke, and that's really annoying to me. But rest, the comfort, the sound system, all that stuff is all good. However, I will note that I had to turn the subwoofer down because it would rattle when it was set at like 0 in the middle. So I had to turn it down to like -5 or 7 or something just so it would stop rattling, which is a hilarious Land Rover problem. I mean, if you're gonna have an off-road vehicle and then it's gonna start to rattle, I don't know if that's why the sub is rattling, but it was. I turned it down and now it doesn't rattle anymore. And the audio sounds fine. It's not like I'm missing out. It was like too much bass. But let's get to the heart of this thing, which is the 5-liter supercharged V8 sitting under the hood. A Land Rover staple engine for some time now, or a Jag Land Rover staple engine. Here in the Defender, it makes 518 horsepower and 461 pound-feet of torque, backed up by just a really solid 8-speed gearbox. It's 4-wheel drive. There's no 2-wheel drive version, and it's real 4-wheel drive, you know, transfer case, I said, 4 high, 4 low. It has terrain response too, so there's tons of driving modes, including on the V8, which is a first for the Defenders, is they get a dynamic mode, which is useful on the streets to stiffen up the suspension. This also has air suspension, and I have to say, this is one of the most comfortable vehicles I've driven up here, up Maple Springs Truck Trail, and we've taken tons of things up this thing. Number 1 is still the G-Class. My Montero is still very high on the list just because it has the bouncy seat, which is basically like a cheat code. But this would be number 2. This is behind the G-Class in terms of just insanely comfortable here on the trail. I'm almost shocked at how comfortable it is up here. I don't remember the other Defenders feeling this good, but those ones might not have had air, which is probably making a fair difference. And it's not like I'm banging and crashing and using up all the travel over some of these. In some of the more whoopy sections, you definitely hit the limits of travel, but it hasn't felt abrupt or like, oh my God, something's gonna break when I'm doing it, which is always a good sign. And there's even a graphical display so you can see where each wheel is in its range of travel. But the V8 whips. I think the quoted 0 to 60 time is 4.9 seconds, so you're sub 5. Top speed's 149 miles an hour, which I do not want to do in one of these. Even though, you know, the V8 does get beefier anti-roll bars, I don't care. I don't want to do that in this vehicle. I would like to try it maybe once on a runway, and then I'd be good. SUVs don't need to be that fast. There we go. There we go. Mountain biker. Those guys are crazy who run this Black Star Trail, is what they call it, where they're heading on his mountain bike. He's got his full dust on, so he's smart. But yeah, this would be an insane climb. Thankfully for him, it's only 73 out. So on the street, it feels good. It handles well. It has massive brakes. It's actually, you can't instantly tell it's the V8 unless you know this is specifically the Carpathian edition with that satin finish. But it's the brake calipers. There's a little V8 badge in the side sill, and then the exhaust out back, and that's really it for the exterior markings to let you know this is more than the others. And it's funny too because like the 4-cylinder is fine. It's fine. That's the one wait, hello, this guy's coming in hot. Ooh, V10 Touareg. It's gonna break. The 4-cylinder's fine. That's what my team and I drove when we won our wave, the media wave of the Land Rover Trek event, which, you know, don't mean to brag. We destroyed the competition and it was awesome. And that 4-cylinder was fine. There's a little clunkiness in the gearbox when doing some off-road stuff, but otherwise it was fine. The 6-cylinder is great. The 6-cylinder is a really good option for the Land Rover. It's just that the V8 is a V8 and it kicks a lot of ass. There's not a ton of noise with it in the cabin, which is surprising, but Jag and Land Rover have kind of been doing more than that across their lineups, where you hear less of the engine from inside the car. But if you pop your window down and you get a reminder, you're like, oh yeah, it sounds fantastic back there. And if you're a passerby or another car, it sounds awesome. It still sounds awesome out the back of this thing, which is great. It's really good to know. It's really fun. Just because you're in here, you got your tunes bumping, it's like in the background, you're like, okay, and you step on it, it's not quite as loud as you think. If you pop the window down, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's what's going on here. And I can appreciate that. So, it's a Defender with more, so it costs more. The base price of a D90 is like mid-50s. If you want the 6-cylinder, you immediately add $12,000 to the price. If you want a V8 in the 90 or the 110, you're over $100,000. It's just boom, you shoot to 100,000 plus. This one, as tested, this Carpathian edition, which you don't need to get, as tested is 114, 115. That is a lot of money. However, I'm about to tell you why it's well priced. Do not laugh at me. This is true. I can back this up. So, the Defender 90 and 110 V8s compete with the 392 Wrangler on the bottom end and the G-Class on the higher end. A 392 Wrangler starts in the mid-70s. By the time you're out the door with the options, is 80s. And for the sake of discussion, I'm not talking about any dealer markups. So say low 80s for a 392 Wrangler. Say 115 for this two-door. The V8's going to be around, the 110's going to be around the same anyway. So just a V8 Defender. It's going to be 114, 115, 110 you can do for less. You don't need the Carpathian. And then a G550 starts at 138, but you can get a lot of options. Whereas on the Defender, there's not, like V8 Defender, there's not a ton of options. On the lower stuff there is, but not on the V8s for some reason. Then the AMG G-Class starts at 158 or something, and you can option those to the moon and back. And if we did factor in dealer markups, the dealer markups on those right now is wild. So this is in between, well in between the G-Class. It's well below the G-Class, and it is not as refined as the G-Class, and it's definitely not as powerful as the AMG. It's more powerful than the 550 though. It is more refined and more powerful than the Wrangler, so it is priced in between them, and it works. So it's so much money, I can't afford one, but I concede that it is priced well based on what new cars cost and what people are willing to pay for things. This thing sits in a good spot. That's ridiculous to say of a $115,000 vehicle, but here we are. Welcome to 2022. Now, were I to get one of these, it would be a 110 V8. It would not be a Carpathian, and then I would have to get it wrapped in a color, because Land Rover is being silly about that. I don't want white, I don't want black, I don't want gray. Those colors are fine, but come on, you have some great color choices on your other vehicles. Let's pick that shit up. Let's, I make one in sand glow just for shits and giggles. It doesn't need camel trophy logos because I don't want, camel logos on my stuff. But a sand glow option, a BRG option will be nice. Some two-tone colors, get a different color on the roof. Like BRG with a white roof would be sick. Yeah, give us some colors for crying out loud. There's colors on even the Defender family of vehicles on these smaller engines. So what the hell are we doing here? Regardless, to sum up, rant coming to an end. This thing is awesome. It's a mountain goat, even with these dumb wheel and tire package on it. I really like it. I love it, in fact. And I should mention, some of you are gonna ask, fuel economy. It's atrociously bad. Before I drove this on the highway, I was averaging between 10 and 11 miles per gallon. Once I got it on the highway, it went up to 19, which I think is actually the EPA estimate. But around town, I am at between 10 and 11 miles per gallon, and that is hilarious. But if you're buying this, I don't think you're worried about fuel, even in these times with the crazy fuel prices. I went to fill it up today and put 100 into it because the machine stopped at 100 and I had 3/4 of a tank. I was like, neat. Even with that, still love it. Need to drive a 110 just because they look better. I don't care what you 90 lovers say. The 110 is the better looking version. It's more useful. It just looks better proportioned. I need to see one on 20s, which I'm sure Land Rover will never put in the fleet. I want to see one on real tires, not these Continental Sport contacts, whatever the hell, you know, all weak ass all season, or I don't even know. They're Continentals for sure. They're definitely not all terrains. I don't like them. They're fine on the road, but I would sacrifice on-road drivability for a true knobby all-terrain tire, which would push fuel economy lower, I'm sure, which would be even funnier to me. I'm still ranting. So now I am officially going to wrap up. I love this. Awesome approach, departure, and breakover angles. It's like, I think it's like 37 and 40 for approach and departure, or 31. It's 37 for approach, 40 for departure, breakover is like 31. And then I think it has the highest weighting depth of any production vehicle stock at 35.4 inches, which is just, you're driving through the ocean at that point. I love it, I love it, I love it. Let's finish on that positive note. I can live with the flaws because the flaws are fixable. There you go. Yeah, the flaw I can't live with is that I don't make enough money to buy one of these, and for that I'm gonna have to just, I don't know, get another job or something. But I would like one. Yeah, here we go. The steering feel is great. The seat feels good. All that stuff. I'm extremely. Hold on. I got some like loose food from lunch. I'm just like a piece of garlic. It just appeared. I think I spit it out. That is absolutely disgusting. I'm still gonna put it at the end of the video.